If you wanted to make a dinosaur in a card game, how would you do it? What would it look like? How would it interact with the game, and how would it affect the game's players? On March 11, 2014, Blizzard Entertainment released Hearthstone, Heroes of Warcraft. The initial set consisted of 240 cards, with 9 playable classes, based on the classes from World of Warcraft. Each one of these classes was assigned a 1 per deck legendary minion. For Hunter, this came in the form of a big and beautiful dinosaur. His name is King Krush. In China, during the 3rd and 4th century, the chronicles of Huayan would report the discovery of dragon bones in the Sichuan province. This discovery would lead to a long tradition in the region of using such fossils for traditional medicine. What these bones were, however, would not be categorized until over a millennium later, when, after the discovery of such fossils became quite common, Sir Richard Owen, in 1842, coined the name dinosaur, meaning terrible or great lizard. A dinosaur commands respect. Within a year, the British government approved the building of a natural history museum, in which to showcase the new and exciting finds of early paleontologists, and respect the terrifying reality that humanity had stumbled into, that something much, much bigger once walked the earth. In 1900, in Wyoming, United States, Barnum Brown, the assistant curator of the American Museum of Natural History, came upon a partial skeleton of a dinosaur during a dig, and his discovery that day would change how dinosaurs were viewed and respected forever. The president of the museum would name the skeleton Tyrannosaurus Rex, the king tyrant lizard. King Krush is a simple card, a 9-mana 8/8 with the least amount of text in the entire game for a legendary. A singular word, charge. Charge allows King Krush to attack the turn it's summoned. When Krush hits the field, the game plays a short animation paired with the sound effect of the earth shaking with the approaching of its footsteps. The best defense against King Krush is to have someone you don't like standing in front of you. We didn't respect the king. In the early days of Hearthstone, King Krush was seen as unplayable, with cards like Ragnaros Firelord taking the slot of an 8/8 that could deal 8 damage the turn it was summoned, with the upside that Ragnaros was free of taking damage itself and could be played a turn earlier. As more expansions came out for Hearthstone, King Krush started to see more time in the game, but not by player choice. Instead, he was usually found off the back of Web Spinner, a 1/1 that gave you a random beast when it died, or Ram Wrangler, a card that for 5 mana could summon a random beast if you controlled another. And if you prayed very hard, sometimes it summoned a King Krush. But just like that faithful day in Wyoming in 1900, King Krush's time would finally arrive.
Legends tell of a vast underground world and the countless treasures that lie in store for worthy adventurers. To kobolds and catacombs. It's kobolds and catacombs!
Give this 2 stars. I personally don't think it'll work out, but there is a lot of value potential here by eating a death rattle, eating something about to die. I think it will be experimented with and then found wanting.
Crushed.
In 2017, with the release of the Kobolds and Catacombs expansion, the meta saw a shift towards an extremely Raza Priest-oriented meta. A deck defensive enough to fight back against aggro decks, but fast enough that it could also kill a mid-range or control deck by turn 9 if they weren't careful. While Face Hunter was a deck that people experimented with early on, Hunter slowly became more and more obscure as the meta moved on, and that's when it all changed. Brian Kibler is one of Magic the Gathering's most influential players, winning multiple Pro Tour championships and earning himself the nickname Dragon Master. But this time, Kibler wasn't looking for a dragon. In fact, he's not even playing Magic. He's about to slam a Kathrena Winterwisp on the board on turn 7 and completely throw his opponent for a loop. This is Brian Kibler's Kathrena Secret Hunter. The idea is pretty simple. Basically, you try to win the early game if possible with a combination of strong secrets and the synergy with Cloaked Huntress and Emerald Spellstone, and if that fails, then you slam some big beasts on the board in the late game. So between that aggressive early game plan and the pure stats from Kathrena, and of course the value of Deathstalker Rexar, the Death Knight, Hunter was more or less able to compete with a lot of the meta at the time. And the one card that helped run the clock against a lot of control decks especially was King Krush. See, a 6/6 that summons a big beast is threatening, but if that beast doesn't do anything when it's summoned, well, you just have to wait and hope your opponent doesn't have ways to interact with your minions. But what if the beast from Kathrena had charge? King Krush allowed Kathrena to have flexibility when played, either trading with another minion on board or doing what it does best and ramming into the opponent's face head first for big damage. Finally, the modern era of King Krush had arrived. Here we are on July 2nd, 2018 in the top 8 of the Summer Championship, and we see a slightly different version of the Kathrena list, with Shao Ti opting for Oozling and Silver Vanguard in order to put big minions like Lich King and Kathrena in play. But there's a new friend now, an 8-mana 7/7 Charged Dinosaur, that has charge but can't attack heroes if it's played from hand. A8 won the game and the series overall with his Cube Druid, but for the first time, a major Hearthstone event was shaken up by King Krush, and things were just starting to warm up. September 2018 at DreamHack Montreal. It's the final round between two superstars, Phenomeno and Just Saying. The format is last man standing, meaning that as long as you win with a deck, you can keep playing it. Otherwise, you have to switch off. It's a rough couple of games for Saiyan as Pheno's Quest Rogue stomps over his Druid and Odd Rogue, leaving him with just one deck. Egg Hunter. See, people have been experimenting with Hunter over the last few months and discovered that a much more explosive version was possible with Devilsaur Egg, Terrascale Stalker, Spider Bombs, and Carnivorous Cube, as well as the Kathrena Charged Devilsaurs and Krush as finishers. But this was going to be rough. Quest Rogue was heavily favored, and he had to beat not just one but 3 of Pheno's decks in a row. An almost perfect start for Pheno, as he completes his quest on turn 6. With endless 4/4s in the future, the odds are against Saiyan to come back. But a smart play with Carnivorous Cube and some Spider Bombs, and suddenly Saiyan begins to stabilize as he's approaching turn 9, and picks up a King Krush. Now Saiyan chooses not to play King Krush despite knowing he's playing slightly more into Vanish, slow rolling the game and the audience who wants to see the king. But the next turn he isn't so merciful, slamming King Krush to kill Pheno and bring his chances of winning back into the mix. The second game is even Warlock versus Egg Hunter, and Saiyan just barely holds on with a top deck on Deathstalker Rexar.
Pheno's in disbelief right now.
He's won this tournament twice already, and he's going to go to game 5 most likely. Pheno's face.
Pheno's just in disbelief.
Final game is against Pheno's Odd Warrior, a grindy 40-minute game, with Krush Kathrena delivering a huge tempo swing towards the end.
He's so close to taking this down. He said after winning his semi-final, he said, I don't want to be in the final because I don't want to lose. And Saiyan, who was in despair in the middle of game 3, sees Pheno takes off the headset, and he is the champion of DreamHack Montreal. He's the player with the most DreamHack wins of all time.
A couple of months later was DreamHack Atlanta. Once again in the finals are two titans of the pro community, Seohyun 628, also known as Eddie, and his opponent, Sintolol. In the quarter and semi-finals, Eddie had swept his previous two opponents with a surprise priest deck that was very strong and very volatile. Sintalal, seeing this as a real threat, banned the priest. However, this left up Eddie's Egg Hunter. After a quick win and loss off his warrior, Eddie's Hunter proved to be the clutch he needed, as his eggs and thus Devilsaurs proved to be too much, first for Sintalal's Druid, and then his Paladin. Eddie had just won DreamHack Atlanta with King Krush in his lineup. But with the rotation of Devilsaur Egg, Carnivorous Cube, and of course Kathrena Winterwisp, Death Rattle Hunter was more or less relegated to the Wild format, and its power level there was just not high enough for it to be oppressive. So the only Hunter deck still being playable in Standard was then Midrange Hunter. So the odds of King Krush ever seeing play had now faded completely out of view. One last tournament as a send-off for the deck was at HCT Winter Championship. Roger would climb his way to the finals with a unique version of the Death Rattle Hunter deck, and find himself facing down Bunny Hopper's aggressive mid-range Hunter. Bunny makes a Hail Mary play to build a Scavenging Hyena along with a Tundra Rhino onto an empty board. If unanswered, this would give him a shot at victory. However, Kathrena Winterwisp pulling King Krush ends Bunny Hopper's dreams. Roger would go on to win the series, and for a brief shining moment, King Krush was truly the king of the world. In the 1993 film Jurassic Park, Jeff Goldblum's character of Ian Malcolm serves as an endless source of ethical objections to resurrecting the dinosaurs. While early on he feels like just a conspiracy theorist, the end result of the film brings his objections to reality.
Yeah, but your scientists were so preoccupied with whether or not they could, they didn't stop to think if they should. Boy, do I hate being right all the time.
In much the same way, the expansion, Saviors of All Doom, in August of 2019, resurrected a lurking force, for better or worse. The set saw the return of the affectionately dubbed Highlander style of deck, sacrificing consistency in order to play only one copy of each card in your deck, for a big payoff. In this case, Druid, Paladin, Mage, and Hunter received their big payoff cards, but for our purposes here, we have to talk about Dino Tamer Brand. And so, this is Highlander Hunter. In 2019, we saw a switch to a new format for Hearthstone esports, Specialist, which required players to bring only one deck, and then they got to more or less just change a couple cards between them, like a sideboard, like Magic the Gathering or Yu-Gi-Oh! And it sucked. It was so bad. Anybody who played at that time could tell you that it was terrible idea, that they had no clue why. I have no clue why they made that the format. It was awful. Anyway, but that gave certain decks a unique ability to show their dominance, because you could tech certain cards in between the different builds. And so one of those decks was Highlander Hunter. Here we are at the top 8 of Masters Tour Seoul, and Liss is facing down Sunni's Combo Priest with his Highlander Hunter. In these games, we really see the power of Highlander Hunter and its powerful one-offs. After a tense first 2 games, it all comes down to Game 3, and a turn 9 Dino Tamer Bran brings King Krush down to give Liss a strong lead and steal the deal for him. Highlander Hunter was here to stay. Its versatility and power would reach a peak with the 2019 World Championship and Leun's Highlander Hunter. The height of talent in Hearthstone as Leun faces down Casey. Both players have a game apiece, with Casey scraping a win with his Quest of All Shaman and Leun winning on turn 4 with her Combo Priest. Now we have Highlander Hunter versus Casey's Quest Druid, a deck that if not beaten quickly can run over almost any deck in the late game. A clear on turn 7 from Casey and dropping a 1-4 leaves Leun's turn 8 Ragnaros looking quite weak, until a fateful top deck of Dino Tamer Bran slams King Krush on the board for 8 damage to Casey's face. Casey makes the best of his turn, playing perfectly around the 2 secrets from Leun, but the Ragnaros with a guaranteed 8 finishes off the game and puts Leun up 2-1 against Casey. King Krush and Ragnaros, a duo that just 5 years in the past, no one could have imagined working in such synergy. Liyun would go on to win the finals 3-0, with Highlander Hunter bringing in a quick final win. A victory that would bring to Hearthstone some of the most coverage the game had ever received, being the first woman champion as well as the first winner from China. A truly momentous occasion.
I was waiting in line for backup signups, and there is this guy telling me that if you're a girl, you should not wait in line here. It's not for you. And now today, I'm here with all the support from the fans. I want to say to all the girls out there who have a dream for esports, for competition, for glory, if you want to do it and you believe in yourself, you should just forget your gender and go for it.
Highlander Hunter would continue to see play as a top-tier deck throughout Dinotamer brand's lifecycle, and achieve a top 4 for Rami 94 at Masters Tour Jönköping and a top 4 for Dreadeye, later that year at Masters Tour Montreal. Dinotamer brand's real big moment for 2021 was the final between Alutemu and Leda at Masters Tour Asia Pacific, where both players would have a Dragon Highlander Hunter in their lineups. Leda played turn 7 Bran against Alutemu's Rogue, the king swiftly being killed off by his flicks. Nevertheless, it was enough for Leda to win, putting him up 2-1. Alutemu's own Highlander Hunter would go on to lose the exact same matchup and give Leda the final victory. A turn 7 without King Krush slamming your opponent for 8 is a recipe for defeat. Just like the Dinosaurs, however, Dinotamer brand's time would come and go, with a rotation on the horizon for April of 2021. The final tournament of the cycle, Masters Tour Ironforge, would see 0 Hunter players in the top 16, once again bringing into question, when would we see our Tyrant King again? While the terms are now synonymous with the dinosaurs themselves, the periods of Triassic, Jurassic, and Cretaceous were first identified decades earlier by 3 separate geologists with 0 knowledge of dinosaurs. The periods happened to coincide nicely with the evolution of dinosaurs, so we just kind of kept their terminology. And now everyone just thinks Triassic, Jurassic, Cretaceous. Oh, that must be the way that we categorize dinosaurs, but it's not. It's just about rocks. But if the Triassic was the early period of the terrible lizards, then 2018 with Cube Hunter was the Triassic of King Krush. Early and clunky, with his position in the deck being questionable at times. The Jurassic period is the one that gets all the fame, much like the Highlanders and Dinotamer brand, but realistically, the dinosaurs are still not the main focus. But the true, undisputed era of the dinosaurs was the Cretaceous, where the diversity of the dinos exploded, seeing over 1,200 different species of dinosaurs. And if that sounds like a lot, it is. The Jurassic had about 700. So there were twice as many dinosaurs, or species, biodiversity, whatever you want to call it, in the Cretaceous era. So it would be fair to say that we have seen the Cretaceous era of King Krush since the release of Voyage to the Sunken City. One thing that has been proven time and again is that summoning King Krush from the deck for cheaper than 9 mana has been a winning strategy, and thus, when Ashar and Saber came out in Voyage, the race was on to find a way to break it with King Krush. The plan was to swing with a Harpoon Gun after shuffling one of these into your deck, or the gun, allowing for turn 4 Hydralodon or Mountain Bear without the need to even play Saber in advance. And suddenly, Beast Hunter was born. While various versions of Beast Hunter experimented with Saber, and had a good deal of success, the version that would come to exemplify the archetype was Big Beast Hunter, taking advantage of the extra health and cards allowed by Prince Renathal. On the back of those powerhouse cards, Beast Hunter would soar to new heights, going from a niche deck to a genuine S-tier contender with the release of Murder at Castle Nathria, which saw new inclusions to the deck. The deck's big time to shine would come at the Masters Tour Mon Disorder. Going into the top 16 of the tournament, the narrative was heavily focused on half of the remaining field being Chinese players, and the likelihood that one of them would go on to be its champion. Round 1 of the top 16 saw the Danish Fury Hunter versus Miaowo from China. Fury Hunter is one of the game's most respected players, and today he is bringing a big beast hunter list that looks like this. The few differences from the earlier lists are the inclusions of Theotar Mad Duke and Sylvanas the Accused, a newly released and powerful card. Fury Hunter cues his hunter into Miaowo's big druid deck, a favorable matchup by the best of estimations. But things don't go as smoothly for him, and the matchup becomes a grindy race to the finish. In the top 8, Fury faces down Dardar Binks, who did not bring King Krush at all. And well, we can see how well that went. Top 4 sees Fury Hunter facing off against the last remaining Chinese player of the tournament, Spring. Fury takes a slow but steady win in Game 1 with his mage before moving on to his hunter. On turn 3, he swings with his harpoon gun, and we start to see the tough decisions this card can bring for the deck. While picking King Krush will give it a 3 mana discount, allowing for a 6 mana 8 damage finisher, Beastkeeper Tavish is a value pick that will allow for the game to go long versus the Thief Rogue, and Sire Denathrius also can play as a finisher, with the added benefit of becoming stronger the longer it stays in hand. Fury does have 2 swings with the weapon, but his plan is to play Pet Collector on 5 and bring out a Sharn Saber from his deck, so that he can get the Sunken Saber off the second swing of the Harpoon Gun, meaning he can only pick one of these 3 cards, and possibly leave the other 2 on the bottom of his deck for the rest of the game. After Fury spends almost the entire turn, he makes the decision everyone wants to see. He respects the king. Of course, the real reason he would make this decision is to clear up the pool of beasts in his deck and make Sunken Saber more likely to pull Hydralodon, which is exactly what ends up happening, and it closes out the game for Fury. Sometimes the best defense against a King Krush is losing to Hydralodon before he can be summoned. Fury goes on to win the series 3-1 and move on to the finals to face Leandro Leal, yet another player who neglected to bring the King of the Dinos. Fury Hunter aggressively pushes Leandro out of the deal with his Wild Seeds and Trogs, far away from the turns that King Krush could even come out. The next game, Fury Hunter's mage would close out the series in a dramatic 3-0 sweep. So while King Krush didn't play a particularly important role in these finals, the overall impact of the card in the deck was still undeniable, and yet another championship was won with the King. Not to mention, this was the second championship Fury Hunter had won in the past 2 years. The history of King Krush has been heavily tied in with some of the most impressive players and achievements in Hearthstone for years now, but we have yet to talk about the most recent iteration of King Krush gameplay. Welcome to Hound Hunter. While every other deck we talked about so far used King Krush as an accessory, Hound Hunter would actually elevate King Krush and make him truly the win condition for the entire deck. With the release of the Festival of Legends miniset, Hollow Hound quickly proved to be a powerful force, and the combination of Lorthamar Theron to double the stats of all the minions in the deck made Hound Hunter a resilient but explosive mid-range deck that could play Lorthamar Theron to double King Krush's stats, and with faithful companions summon 2 16/16 King Krushes together for lethal. This would be put to the test at the Masters Tour Summer Championship. On the bracket for top 8 was someone who put their trust in some very different decks than the rest of the field. Instead of combo decks, he had chosen tempo and midrange. Instead of mage, he had chosen King Krush. His name is Gyu, and he's facing down Dreadeye in the semifinals of the Summer Championship. One of the things we see here is that he's drawn both his King Krush and his Lorthamar Theron, meaning he has no way of doubling the King's stats. This can be a big hurdle for the deck, as it won't be able to pull 32 points of damage from his deck now. But Gyu uses Faithful Companions to instead pull Mr. Mukla, and suddenly, make Dreadeye stare down 40-40 in stats. Of course, Dreadeye has the solid alibi, which allows him to minimize the damage he takes in the coming turn, blocking 38 of that 40 Mukla power. Gyu top decks his second faithful companion to bring out the deck's namesake, Hollow Hound, helping him clear off the board and threaten lethal again with no second alibi. This proves to be the end for Dreadeye, as he concedes. Game 3, and Gyu closes out the series with his Shaman crushing the inferior Arcane Hunter that runs no King Krushes. The final pits Gyu against what most would consider to be the favorite of the tournament, Pocket Train, whose competitive reputation has only grown more and more as the year has gone on. After a quick round 1 win with his Mage against Pocket Train Shaman, we see what was a very common matchup on Ranked Ladder at the time, Hound Hunter versus Outcast Demon Hunter. It's a tough matchup for the Hunter, and Gyu would need everything to go right to win this. He plays to his outs with zombies, but Pocket Train perfectly plays around it to set up a guaranteed lethal with Halveria, and Gyu goes down. Series tied 1-1. Game 3, Hound Hunter versus Naga Mage. Gyu struggles to create early game pressure, and as Pocket Train slowly builds up pressure and damage, it's too much for the Hunter to take, and Pocket closes out with frozen touches to the face. 2-1. Gyu must now win 2 in a row and get a win with his Hunter that has now lost twice. A lot is riding on this. Gyu has a strong aggressive start, but Pocket Train has ways of answering his threats, utilizing his life total for tempo. This can be dangerous, however. If Gyu manages to lure Thamar on 7 into faithful companion King Krush on 8 for 16 damage, Pocket Train is going to lose. Pazik and Okani force Pocket Train to make some more defensive plays, and it's looking really good for Gyu. And then, it happens. One turn before Gyu is set to play his Lord Thamar Theron, he draws King Krush. Look, it's easy to look at competitive Hearthstone and see RNG as just the nature of the game. And that certainly is true. Just like with any card game, what you draw in your opening hand, as well as throughout the course of the game, could completely change whether you win or lose. But the ability to mentally come back from a case of bad RNG and play well is not easy. Especially something that feels just so unfair. There's 32 cards left in Gyu's deck here, and any draw but Krush on turn 7 and 6 was fine for him. And yet, here, he draws King Krush, completely ruining his entire game plan and just throwing him off. This video is about King Krush, about what a fun, strong, dynamic card it can be, and yet, we've seen that just by drawing it, you risk losing a guaranteed game. King Krush by itself has never been, and never will be, the best card Hunter has, because it can't be. It only exists as a tool for stronger cards to abuse. Cards like Kathrena, cards like Ashar and Saber, and cards like Faithful Companions. Over the years, Hearthstone has rotated or changed many of the original class legendaries from the classic set. Only 2 remain in standard, unchanged. King Krush and Grommash Hellscream. Both cards have charge, and provide their class with a late game finisher, and yet, Grom has remained a consistent and independent finisher for Warrior for years. King Krush can't do that. Not by itself. And so, one day, King Krush will rotate. Or it'll be buffed, or it'll get reworked, so that it's more playable. It's only a matter of time. But now, we've seen 10 years of King Krush. An indomitable force with the ability to break other cards and change the outcomes of games on a whim. This truly has been the era of King Krush. And the thing is, Gyu didn't even lose that game. He may have drawn King Krush, but he also drew both Faithful Companions, which allows him to chain Mr. Mukla into Hydralodon to create a board state that looks like this. Hunter legendaries have gotten better and better in the past 10 years, but one thing has remained consistent: powerful beasts, and better yet, dinosaurs like Hydralodon still bring Rexar victories. And speaking of victory,
It's like a sanguine depths to get past. Double jam chest.
How about
That's
that?
it. That's it, right? Oh no, it's not quite. Oh yeah, it is because the rush.
Yeah.
And then it can use the sanguine depths to kill off the additional feral spirit. So that's both, and that's enough damage to push the attack and the weapon through to the face.
Oh, the Pocket Train, you could just see his demeanor completely change.
during the 1970s, revolutionary findings were put out by geologists Luis and Walter Alvarez, and they forever changed the way that dinosaurs were viewed. They began to popularize the belief that a meteor was responsible for the extinction of the dinosaurs 65 million years ago. It was concluded in 2010 that the most likely reason for the mass extinction was the meteor that caused the Chicxulub crater off the coast of Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico. Over the years, more studies have further added evidence to this theory, and in pop culture, the idea of the meteor destroying the dinosaurs forever and bringing an end to the Cretaceous is seen as a fact. On August 30th, 2023, the Hearthstone dev team nerfed Faithful Companions, essentially gutting the viability of the card. Hound Hunter, with its powerful game-ending combo of 2 large King Krushes, was dead. Much like the meteor that brought an end to the Tyrannosaurus Rex, Team 5 had brought an end to King Krush.
And that's where the video was supposed to end. It's almost Christmas, and I've been writing this video since July. And the nerf to Faithful Companions that came in August was pretty predictable. I didn't realize the nerf was going to break it that badly, but it ended up fitting my narrative. But as of December 2023, when I'm finishing up this video, King Krush is still seeing play? Like, I took a look at HS Replay, and all the Highlander Hunter lists doing well at Legend right now still run the Lorthamar King Krush combo with Faithful Companions. And, like, it has a good win rate. Like, my whole narrative of the meteor and the extinction of the dinosaurs is, like, ruined. Because King Krush still it just can't stop. It's not the same as Hound Hunter was. It's not as powerful, but, like, man, come on. I just wanted this video to be over, and now I've got to write a whole new ending to this video. Also, like, this mic, it is plugged in, but it's plugged into my computer because I don't have a dongle for my phone, so which is what I'm, like, capturing the picture on. So I'm gonna have to go back and sync the audio from the video with the audio that I'm recording from this mic, because it's going to sound better, right? Because it's closer to my mouth, and it's a better quality mic. And also, definitely, this is not going to give me more work just because I wanted to look more legit by holding this. Can you tell that I am not a professional YouTuber?
The appeal of dinosaurs in media can be traced all the way back to 1914 with the silent film Brute Force and Gertie the Dinosaur, 100 years before the public release of Hearthstone. Humans have been fascinated with the discovery of these great beasts since our earliest encounters with them, and since the early days of Hearthstone, players have come along who have been fascinated with trying to break King Krush. Humans' innate curiosity about the planet Earth and its history have led us to fantasize and romanticize the idea of dinosaurs walking among us. With the rise of visual media in the 20th century, the ability to do that has never been clearer. With games like Dinosaur 3D, movies like Jurassic Park, and dinosaur-themed amusement parks, we can finally live out this age-old dream. Maybe that's why King Krush appeals to so many players of the game. That feeling of summoning him, the stomps of his feet, and the shake of the screen as you hit your opponent for lethal damage. Truly, that is something worthy of a king. Thanks for watching.
They're moving in herds. They do move in herds.